Hey guys, Xaryu here, and today I'm going to be going over Shadow Priest as it stands right now on Battle for Azeroth Beta. Very exciting stuff here for this class in specific. On the last video, I went over some mage specs. Here I'm going to be going over Shadow Priest, and I kind of want to show you as far as talents, honor talents, what's changed, what stayed the same, and kind of how the class is feeling overall. If you guys want me to do any other classes, make sure to let me know down below in the comments. If you want me to, I really want to do a video on a rogue, or if you want me to cover any other classes, let me know. I do have the beta. But let's quickly get started. Let's just start with talents. So in this first row, we have Fortress of Mind, we have Shadowy Insight, and we have Shadow Word Void. Some spells I think have been moved around here, but I don't think any of these are actually new. I would believe that Shadowy Insight would be the spec of choice. So Shadow Word Pain, proccing those Mind Blasts, and then your Mind Blasts are instant. Adds a little bit of consistent pressure, and I'm a huge advocate of talents like this. Back in Mist of Pandaria, Mage had a talent like this, where if you put up a Living Bomb, the Living Bomb had a chance to proc Frost Firebolts. The reason it's so fun is because it adds a little RNG element to the game that's not too overboard, but you can throw out dots, and then from those dots, you get more instant procs. I love spell designs like this because it makes the class enjoyable to play. Very simple. Mania here, Body and Soul, and Sand Lane. Once again, 3 talents that we've seen in the past, but they're moved around in the talent tree. So Mania, increase your movement speed to 35% based up on your current insanity. I don't know why I have this spec chosen. Body and Soul might be a little bit better. Sand Lane might be a little bit better. I've just been kind of messing around with it. But Sand Lane used to increase the damage of Vampiric Touch, and now it's a new talent that reduces the cooldown of Vampiric Embrace by 45 seconds and increases its healing done by 25%. If you guys don't know what Vampiric Embrace is, boom, there it is, down in the bottom right-hand corner. But I don't think that's really worth it. The sprint on the Power Word Shields is interesting, but at the same time, there's a 5-second cooldown on your Power Word Shields, and on top of that, it costs, a good amount of your mana. It costs maybe 15-20% of your mana to use a Power Word Shield. So if you really want to just increase your mobility overall, Mania might be the spec of choice. If you want to guarantee more fears, maybe Body and Soul. So maybe one of these two. For this next row, we have Twist of Fate, we have Misery, and we have Dark Void. Dark Void, I believe, could be a new spell. Unleashes an explosion of dark energy around the target, dealing 1,000 Shadow Word damage and applying Shadow Word Pain to all nearby enemies. In my knowledge, this is not currently in the game. Doesn't seem like the greatest ability here, unless it scales where it does a ton of damage on that explosion, but I would really be willing to bet this is more of like an AoE ability for Mythic Plus, or an AoE ability to make Shadow Priest a little bit more viable in those type of situations. Misery, applying that Shadow Word Pain, and then we have Twist of Fate. After damaging a target below 35%, you gain 10% increased damage and healing for 8 seconds. I would think Misery is the spec of choice here, just because you're getting those extra globals essentially every time you're casting a VT that you don't have to also Shadow Word Pain. Boom, you're gaining yourself an entire global of time back, so it's like a bunch of haste essentially is what this talent is, which is great. Twist of Fate, getting that increased damage, it's okay. But yeah, I would expect something like this so far to be the spec. Now here is a talent that I'm very excited for. 30-yard range, Psychic Horror is coming back. Priests get their stun back, but this time it's actually a stun and not a horror, and it's a stun effect, so it's going to be on stun diminishing return. It's going to, DR with other stuns, stuff like that, but it's a 45-second cooldown, 4-second stun, and Priest getting this back, guys, makes me so happy. When I played Shadow Priest, got rank 1 on my Priest, Gladiator on my Priest, this is one of my favorite talents. Pair it with that silence, throw out the Psychic Horror, the silence, and then burst really hard. That's just the best thing, best feeling ever. I absolutely love it. So Psychic Horror, thumbs up, Blizzard. I'm happy it's back. Then we have the Mind Bomb. I believe it's how we know it as. So it's an AoE stun, but it takes 2 seconds for it to actually detonate. And yeah, I would think that Psychic Horror, just being that instant cast stun, is going to be so much better for PvP than that Mind Bomb. And then we have the last word, reducing the cooldown of silence by 15 seconds. And in some matchups, this could actually be the way to go. Getting that cooldown of silence very low, and it just sitting back and doing PvE damage could be pretty viable. But at the same time, having that Psychic Core and the Silence on the 45-second cooldown, pairing a stun and a Silence together, maybe stun the DPS that you're bursting down, silence the healer, pop every cooldown. Psychic Core is probably going to be the spec of choice here. Shadow Word Death is actually a talent now, which is very interesting. Instead of being baseline, if you don't pick it, I don't believe you get Shadow Word Death at all. We have Shadow Crash, and then we have the Auspicious Spirits. So the spirits are, as we know them, Shadow Crash, I believe, is how we know it. But Shadow Word Death, it's very interesting. 20% or less health, 9-second recharge, 2 charges, generates 15 insanity or 30 insanity if the target dies. So it's like, do you want your death or do you want that Shadow Crash? I would assume death would be the way to go to help finish targets off, but I'm not sure how the metagame is going to kind of feel if you're running just a complete like Shadow Priest Destro or Shadow Priest Ellie where you're completely just trying to do damage. I could see Spirits working, and if you're running a burst comp like RPS, I could maybe see Shadow Crash being viable as well. So kind of depends on the comp you're running, kind of depends how the meta evolves, but probably lock in Shadow Word Death without knowing those things just as a pure guess. Lingering Insanity, Mindbender, and a coming soon talent. Not quite sure what that's going to be, of course. Mindbender is, as we know it, turns Shadow Fiend into a Mindbender, reduces the cooldown, increases its damage by a little bit, I believe. And then we have that Lingering Insanity, giving you that haste bonus at the end of your Void forms, which is awesome as well. Kind of depending on how you want to play, what you want to do. Mindbender would obviously provide a little bit more burst in situations like that. Lingering Insanity provides a little bit more spread pressure because you can get in and out of Void form quicker. So it kind of depends what you want to do there. We have Legacy of the Void, reducing Void Eruption's cast time by 40%, and now it can be cast anytime 60 insanity or higher. We have Void Torrent, which is currently the artifact ability, and now it's put into a talent, which is it's just that channel that does a ton of damage, which is very interesting. We have Surrender to Madness, 4-minute cooldown now. All of your insanity generating abilities generate 100% more insanity. You can cast while moving for 1 minute. Then you take damage equal to 90% of your maximum health and cannot generate insanity for 30 seconds. So this is a much different surrender. It doesn't kill you anymore. It only does 90% of your life, which is still a lot. And you're basically useless for 30 seconds. But when you pop this, you go insane. Probably still not the greatest for PvP. Maybe in some comps, people are just going to CC you on it. They're going to see you popped it. It's a 4-minute cooldown. They're going to see you popped it. You're gonna just cast. You're gonna sheep it. You're gonna CC it. So it'll be interesting. Maybe it'll be the way to go. Especially since it does so much damage. You'd have to pair it. You'd have to almost essentially always pair it with a defensive cooldown like Dispersion just to survive. But this is probably the spec. It'll probably change depending on what comp you're running and depending on what metagame kind of evolves. But here are the PvP talents for Priest, guys. If you haven't seen them yet, we have Gladiator's Medallion, Adaptation Relentless, of course. Would probably think the Gladiator's Medallion is going to be the play for the most part. Pair with that Life Swap. Actually, I don't think Priests have Life Swap anymore. I'm going to double check on that. It actually does not look like it. So Shadow Priests do not have Life Swap anymore, which is going to be a big negative as far as their defensive cooldowns. But we do have some other stuff in place of that. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But there is no Life Swap. So that could be interesting. Gladiator's Medallion, in the past, you used it as almost a cooldown with Life Swap. Since you don't have Life Swap anymore, or at least I don't, not on this beta build, it could be something like Relentless, where you're just kind of reducing all the CC that you might choose a little bit more often as a Shadow Priest instead of that Gladiator's Medallion. It'll still be interesting to see. We have all of these honor talents. If you guys haven't seen this yet, there's about, I think, 11 or 12 honor talents. You get to pick 3 of them. So any 3 is how it's going to work in BFA. It's going to be very interesting to see how the metagame actually plays out. Oh, so Life Swap is actually a PvP talent. So if you wanted to pick that, you could. So it's kind of up to you on how you want to play that. So Trinket with Life Swap would probably be a good play, or Relentless if you're not playing with it. But it's not baseline nonetheless. So we have that Psy-Fiend locked in. Just so much... slow, the damage and the healing reduction, so powerful when you're trying to burst people down. Void Origins, making that Void Eruption instant cast so valuable in PvP. When you're casting a Void Eruption, guys, 1, it can be stopped. 2, it's easier to see it coming. 3, it's just slower. Void Origins makes your whole rotation much smoother. I think it's definitely a solid choice. And then Driven to Madness, while your Void form is not active, being attacked will grant you 9 insanity over 3 seconds. So you can get into Void form much quicker. You can pop your Void Eruptions as soon as, instant cast as soon as you hit full Insanity. So I like these two talents paired together, but there's a lot of interesting choices, right? You have Shadow Mania if you want to really spread those vampiric touches and generate more Insanity that way. Once again, if you want to play a little bit more defensively, you can go with the Void Shift, which is interesting. In the past expansion, you had to choose Psyfiend or Void Shift. Now you can play with both depending on, you know, the composition, the playstyle, what you're playing against. You have that Psychic Link if you want to try something with a little bit more spread pressure as well. We have the Mind Trauma, the Edge of Insanity. Maybe an Edge of Insanity build might come into play, probably not, but you never know based on how scaling works. We have that Driven to Madness, that Fleeting Embrace, so Vampiric Tool introduced by 50%. I wonder how that actually works with Sand Lane, if you can reduce it by a ton and almost just always have that Vampiric Embrace up, because that would be very interesting as well. And then we have Pure Shadow, making Dispersion a Super Dispersion, and of course, Void Shield. So any three talents, guys, once again, I'm just guessing. I don't know. Maybe something like this if you want to play very offensive. Maybe something like this if you want to play very defensive. Kind of depends on how you want to play it, really, right? Depends on the composition. So those are Priest talents and Honor talents. But one thing that I do want to note that I could have even mentioned sooner in the video, but we got Powered Fortitude back, boys. We got buffs back, 10% stamina increase. I actually love buffs like this because it adds a little skill cap to the game. If it gets purged, a good player will rebuff. If it gets purged, a player that's a beginner isn't going to notice. They're not going to rebuff, and now they're going to lose out on 10% stamina. So it adds a little bit of skill to the game, adds a little bit of skill cap, which I absolutely love. I'm trying to just think any other abilities. We have Leap of Faith back, which I'm so excited about, guys. This is one of the reasons I made Priest in the first place. I've been playing Priest for a long time, but I think it was in Cataclysm. Could be wrong in that, but I think it might be in Cata where Leap of Faith was introduced, and being able to just move someone else out of a scatter trap, out of a smoke, you know, if you preemptively grip them out of a smoke bomb, just out of safety, if they jump down off of Blade's Edge and you pull them back up, the ability is just incredibly cool. So getting this back really, really excites me. And then a lot of the Shadow Priest spells that we know them as, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Word Pain, the Mind Blast, the Mind Flays, a lot of the stuff that we're used to, but we also, I guess, we have to choose some things with the PvP talents, whether it's like Life Swamp or that Psyfiend or however you want to play it. And then we also got some new abilities back. So guys, Shadow Priest, I'm a huge fan of how they're looking for BFA. We have a lot of spread pressure. We have a lot of, you know, burst with stuff like Mindbender, Void Form, Void Torrent, those instant Mind Blast procs. And then you have a lot of kind of control with the Psychic Core, the Silences, the Fears. And you have a little bit more support now with the Powered Fortitude, the Life Grip, the Shields, the Mends. Like, I think this is going to be a very fun class in BFA, and I really, really, really can't wait for BFA to launch and to try out Shadow Priest in the new expansion. One quick thing, guys, before we go. I'm also an Orc, and you're probably wondering, how are you an Orc as a Priest? This is the new race, I don't know how to say it correctly, maybe Moghor Orc, something like that. And you get some new passives, so I'll briefly just go over that. Increases pet health 10%, not very good. Savage Blood, okay. Reduces the duration of poison, disease, and curses by 10%, not bad. And increases mount speed by 10%, so a little bit interesting there. And then on the passive, we actually have Ancestral Call, giving Priest a haste buff, but I believe it does more than this. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I believe it gives you a buff depending on how many debuffs it removes, and it'll remove things like poison, disease, and curses, and gives you a buff that strength is dependent on how many it removes. I believe that's how it does work, but pretty cool there on that new Orc race, and I'm really excited to give this race a try in the new expansion as well. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you did not enjoy the video, make sure to give it a big thumbs down. Shadow Priest is looking awesome in BFA, and I cannot wait to try it out. Talk to me down below in the comments for any other classes that you guys want me to cover. I definitely want to do a Rogue one, because Rogue, Mage, and Priest are my 3 favorite classes, and I definitely want to cover a Discipline Priest and a Holy Priest as well, because there's some interesting stuff. But let me know, be sure to let me know what you guys want down below in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next upload. Peace.